All right. Hopefully everyone can hear me. Welcome to the next Insider Social, an AMA session, lunch and learn with TechTO co-founder and obviously current investor and partner at N49P, Alex Norman. So lots we want to cover today, and we really appreciate you all being here. Just a couple quick things to note before we get started and before I bring Alex up here is we do have a chat feature on the right side that you'll see. So please share any questions that you have for him. I know many of you have shared some prior to the event, which we will definitely be covering and asking and also answering as well. So just anything else that you maybe think about or that's interesting to you that you want to throw out to Alex, please share it in the chat and we'll make sure that we get to it. Also, just a couple, I guess, things to note. We do these every quarter. So if you are loving these, you want to see even us do them more often than once a quarter, please let us know. But again, great opportunity to have time for a one-on-one with our co-founders at TechTO. Unfortunately, Jason can't be here for this one. So if you do have any questions for Jason, put them in the chat and I'll make sure that he gets them and we maybe answer them in a newsletter or send out something just personally to our insiders. Just also another thing to mention, we have not only these digital events, but we have in-person insider get-togethers as well. So we do have one coming up on March 27th. We will share more details following this event and also in upcoming insider newsletters. So just make sure you're registered for that. Lots coming out for the insider community and also lots of TechTO events. So keep an eye out as well for those registration details and make sure that you're on the list. It's a great way to meet people in the community. And I think on that, we're probably good to get started. So I'm going to bring up Alex and also share emojis as well. We've got some emojis here on the side. Show some love. Let us know that you're here. And update your profile as well. There's a profile feature. So update your profile picture, details, LinkedIn, just for people to connect with you at a later time. So I'm gonna bring Alex up on stage now. See if this is working.
Yeah,
there we go. Perfect. Okay. Everything seems to be working. Okay. So just big thank you, obviously, Alex, for taking the time. I know you're very busy and this is amazing to get so
but
much time
I've
with
always got
you.
time for the community, so thanks for
Of
arranging it.
course.
Thanks for showing up. I
Yeah,
did
thank
not
you.
read the prep notes, so these questions will be first time I hear them or see them.
It's so Alex has been prefaced that a lot of this stuff we talk about all the time, Alex, but also it is nice to see the community chiming in on maybe points we've already covered, but they might want additional information on, I guess, just what's happening within the fundraising landscape and also maybe related to their own ventures and businesses as well. So I'll just get started. And like I said, please share your questions for Alex as we go. I'll do my best to kind of keep up with the chat and pull some up for him as well. So, okay, first question for you, Alex. Just obviously knowing your background and just you are actively investing in the Canadian market. What are things that are concerning you right now, but also on the flip side, making you really excited?
So those are very broad questions. Um, so maybe I'll start with excited.
Yeah.
Um, I think, well, there's okay. What makes me excited? Look, I'm always
Hmm.
excited about this ecosystem. So let's start there.
Yep.
But what's getting me really excited right now is I see we're now a year into generative AI or LLMs. I'm seeing a lot of experienced people start new businesses because they realize that there's a problem to be solved. They're not just using the technology. They say, "Hey, here's a tool." They're not doing, "Here's a technology. Let me find a problem." They're realizing, "Hey, this technology can solve a problem 10x better."
Hmm.
So every quarter, I've been seeing a ramp up of new activity, new startups, people getting excited because they're passionate about building businesses, passionate about solving problems for a specific customer, and there's a bit of a tsunami of stuff there. I think from a macro perspective, beyond that, I think we're starting to see the recovery of the ecosystem. I don't think we're through the worst of it yet, but I think we're still going to see companies fail, and lots of that won't be
Hmm.
public. But I think I'm seeing it tough to find employees for startups. So that means there's better opportunities for people to join companies and get well compensated. I'm starting to see funding flow again, and more importantly, I'm seeing companies grow their revenue basis. So I'm hearing it, I'm seeing it. So we're building I think, we're building the next. There's a we're setting the stage for the next set of massive Canadian startups, and I
Hmm.
think that's what we need long run. We need companies that create value for customers, make money, and as a business, make money for founders, make money for employees, and make money for investors, because that flywheel will enable us to be much more vibrant tech ecosystem. Um, what I guess on the negative side is I still
Hmm.
think getting funding is incredibly tough for the early stages.
Hmm.
A lot of angels have walked away from, just don't have the liquidity. A lot of people that sort of like the tourists that came into the market, be it high net worth individual, people that were adjacent to tech and said, "Oh, I need to diversify and invest in tech," have not returned. And
Hmm.
the early stage funds generally, we're seeing, real still off on sidelines. A couple others, I think, have quietly not deploying because they don't have cash. You're seeing some of the incubators and accelerators that are from abroad leaving. So in the short run, that makes it harder. I look, companies can, some companies can be capital constrained is good, but some people need
Hmm.
money to be in business. Some need to get the trust of clients. And I think the other thing is, what I'm seeing in the market is we're returned a lot of bad advice on what a startup should do, how companies should raise. So the one thing I think that we miss from the angels more than anything else is that sort of trusted mentor that has skin in the game with the company she's advising. And as those people have gone away, I'm starting to see some lots of misinformation about how to run a company the right way. And again, the good thing with angels, they're not necessarily looking for venture scale. They might be looking for something that's not venture scale, because a healthy ecosystem has the venture scale and the non-venture scale. Um, yeah, and I think there's also just going to be. I think the other thing I'm not excited about is I think it'll be a lot of negative news in the media right now and a bias towards negative versus positive. And I think
Okay.
that just creates a chill over the whole ecosystem.
Okay. And I guess just to keep the like two-sided like positive negative questions going. So another one that we actually got asked in different ways twice. So what businesses do you think need building in the Canadian market? And also on the flip side, as a investor, what ones are you tired of getting pitched to you all the time?
Okay, two very different questions. They're not the flip
Yep.
side. Um, Need building is a weird word, because I don't think we need to build anything. I
Okay.
think what we should be building is founders should strive to solve a problem that they're excited to solve. Because at the end of the day, building a company, and as a team member, early team member or founder, is very difficult. Even the best ones, things are going great, everything's falling apart because as you're scaling. Things are going poorly, everything sucks because it's going poorly. And so I think
Hmm.
people should be looking to solve problems they're excited about. Now, where do we have competitive advantages historically as an ecosystem? Um, there's a lot of tailwinds because of Shopify and e-commerce. There, flip side is serving someone with logistics in Canada has a disadvantage. There's a lot of gaming, talent in the gaming industry in Vancouver and Montreal.
Hmm.
We have a lot of AI talent. I think where I'm personally excited is what I call invisible AI, and when I think I have a few minutes, I'm going to try to write a bit longer post on this. But I think there's been a lot of talks about LLMs. I think there's been a lot of talks about the co-pilots of the world. AI can solve a lot of small problems quickly, and
Yeah.
be and customers, when they see these problems solved, are quickly to pay for it, and it gives a startup an ability to go serve that customer bigger, and sort of sneak in and build a massive business.
Mhm.
And I guess as I've thought through this question a bit more, look, what I would like to see for the ecosystem is people trying to solve massive problems and build massive, impactful companies. The good thing with a
Hmm.
Cohere or a Shopify is it shows what big can be. It shows, and it gets more people about the excitement, right? Excited about the ecosystem. That's what changes narrative. Now you ask me, what don't I want to see?
Yeah, what
Uh,
are you tired of people pitching to you?
so come or what I'm tired of is getting pitches of something that's been tried 20 times before, or there's 20 competitors in, and there's no unique insight into why you'll succeed this time or what you're doing different. And it's
Okay.
like, hey, we're gonna make it easier to plan a trip between friends. I think I get pitched out every 6 weeks.
Okay,
Um,
interesting.
so if you're going to pitch that, really have a unique insight. Or, hey, and it's usually more consumer stuff. It's problems we face as consumers and we solve it. It's like the other one is I'm going to find a bunch of people to play basketball with. Um, and I know some great founders who've pitched me that before and they're like now 10 years later starting great companies. But if you're going to, what I advise you to do is if you're going to pitch something, go and see history if someone else has got founded for this or if there's a lot of people trying this. And if you're going to pitch, you have to have some unique insider approach because if I've seen the same pitch 10 or 20 times, the bar for me getting excited about is very low because investors like I think I just counting since January. I think I've seen 350 decks. So we're what 2 months
Yeah.
in. So that would
Yep.
say that's going to be 1,800,
I was
decks,
gonna say
and that's not even
almost
sub.
one a day so far for an entire
No,
year, and it's not even been a year.
yeah, and that's with that, and I get like, hey, here's from this incubator. Here's our 30 companies. I haven't even had a chance to look at those. So that's like I probably see 1,000 to 2,000 deals. So and I think any other investor that's doing it, and even angels probably see 200 deals a year, right? And
Hmm.
so you have the ability to, you want to say yes, you're optimistic when you're an investor, but you have to have these sort of like heuristics where to let you say no, right? So if you have something that's been tried 20 times in the last 10 years in Toronto alone, which means probably 2,000 times across North America,
Yep.
that your chance of getting my time for that is very low. So you'll have to be something very insightful or very validation that you've got customers excited about it or some unique insight that makes me reconsider my bias against that idea. And again,
O-
there's probably if you maybe you can send me an email and I can come up with a list of here's the 20 ideas I've seen 200
Okay.
times. Maybe I'll get other investors to do that so we can say, hey, you want to, this is almost an anti-pitch list. If you're going to do this, you have to like you're going to be just struggle with.
I think that'd be a great founder FAQ. Is just like the things we don't want to hear you pitching us anymore.
The ideas we've seen 200 times. And so if you
Right.
if you do a follow up, you put in my like Slack. I'll work
Yep.
on that sometime next month.
Perfect. Yeah, the things that just haven't worked in the past and we just don't think are still gonna work. I
Yeah.
think that's great. You just mentioned kind of like Toronto specifically, so we just have a couple questions in the chat. So I guess this is one question. So Alex, what's a Toronto startup that you're really excited about at the moment? It doesn't have to be anything you're involved in, just maybe in general, a Toronto startup you're excited by.
Well, there's a lot of I'm excited about by right. Part of
Okay.
what part of when we curate the list of who we have speak at TechTO or do podcasts, and there's usually some excitement, right? Like, and it can be different stages. Like, I think Amar from Amar Varma at Mantle is something I'm excited about because it's more the founder and the opportunity he sees, and he's had two successful exits. Cohere is exciting from a Canadian perspective because they're trying to compete with OpenAI. Um, so Toronto specifically, and it's hard not to be biased because I know the stories of my
For
portfolio
sure.
companies better, right? Like, um, I guess Toronto area, there's a company called Quilla.ai that I'm an investor in. I think really early stages, really short, but like the founders are moving so fast, solving the problems of their customer. Like what I get excited about is teams that have velocity and put their customers first and are building something and have a massive vision. And the problem is, I need to pull a list of Toronto startups, and I'll tell you which ones get me excited. Like, I think VoiceFlow again, another one of my portfolio companies, is doing very interesting things. I think
Yep.
Ada, not a portfolio company, is also doing interesting things because they've been at the leading, using automation and chatbots to tackle customer service, and they seem to be navigating a technology platform change really well. Um, yeah, and I can go on. I can list 20 companies. Problem, I have a recency bias to ones I've invested in just because I talk to much more often.
Okay. So maybe that's something that we also like follow up on and get you to share maybe your top 10
Yeah.
or something like that.
Well,
Um,
that's why historically we've done the
yep.
rocket ship list because that's informed by us and also a bunch
Yep.
of other investors and leaders in the ecosystem. Because that way you get an unbiased view. Here's people say like basically if you're gonna like if I'm gonna recommend someone goes to join a company to enhance their accelerate their career, it's usually one people are excited about and thinks it's doing something special. Like
Exactly.
another one I'd say again, Spellbook, but again they're Toronto and Newfoundland based, so I don't know if
Hmm.
they qualify as Toronto.
No, I think that's great. I think that perfectly answers the question why we like to do
Like
sessions like
look
this.
look, who do we have coming on March on the best of? So we have Spellbook. I can't remember
Yep.
the lineup. Who else is coming up?
Oh gosh.
So we had
I
Cookin,
have to
which
pull up.
is
I have
also
to pull up the
exciting.
event page because there's a lot that
But
have
like
been added, which is
we
great.
there's thoughts the best of it should be companies we're all excited about. So that like
Exactly. So
yeah
that's a good one to attend as well, as we kind of mentioned at the beginning. So if you want to see what startups we're excited by, Phoenix just posted actually. So we've got Zoo Life Spellbook, Finta, and Mentimeter. So again,
yeah.
all doing very exciting things for the ecosystem. Thanks, Phoenix, for sharing that. Okay, I'll take one more question from the chat, and then I'll just maybe move on to a few others. So this one's interesting to me because I know there would be clearly differences. So, are you noticing any traits that distinguish pre pandemic startups from post pandemic ones?
I'm gonna choose to take my editorial license here and say pre pre peak valuation and post peak valuation because I think pre pandemic is not the right cutting point. It's like 2021, which is pre working. I think post lockdown and pre lockdown, right? Um, I think one thing that we all know is distributed teams
Mm-hmm.
are here to stay.
Yep.
Um, Distributed teams were around before pandemic, but the amount of teams that don't have working in the office as much is much more prevalent. Now, what's interesting is I do see pushback from lots of VCs that will not explicitly will not invest in the distributed team because they believe magic's lost when teams are, especially early stage when you're like 4 or 5, 10 people. There is a magic of being able to communicate and be in the same room together. I don't have an opinion here or there. I think there's a much more focus on capital efficiency
Okay.
and um, before what I think it was much easier to raise and people were much less careful how they spent the dollars. I think there's some extreme cases now where I see people are like, okay, I don't want to invest in anything, and I sort of don't think I want to. Want to be cash flow positive. I don't want to control my growth. I think it's actually gone too far in the Canadian ecosystem because there is a right level of investment for growth and to build a compounding advantage. But like I think there was no there was no discipline during the bubble. I think the other thing was again more from an investor perspective, and I think is and again, and it might not be seen, and I think I see this with the founders too, less tech enabled businesses. And so what I mean by
Right.
that
Okay.
is before in the bubble, people will be doing lots of say like, hey, let's take a business, use technology to make it more efficient. And it's a business that gets 20% margin, 30% margins, and can grow a bit faster than something, everyone else in the industry. The classic one is last mile delivery. Um, we're seeing a lot more digital first. The other thing, flip side, is I'm also seeing a lot more climate and deep tech and hardware, which is exciting.
Yeah.
Um, so the type of companies people are working on, of course, the reinvigoration of generative AI. So less mobile, first less cloud, more generative AI.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I am seeing a difference in the founders out there. I think we're seeing less, at least from my perspective. I think there's less female founders out there, and I don't know why. Um, that's just one thing I've noticed going tracking through what I've seen. Even when I look forward trying to build a list of who feature in TechTO, it
Yeah.
just seems there's less early stage founders out than there were before, and I
Yeah.
don't like. I think that's a negative sign for the ecosystem.
Okay. And that's always been, I think, a pain point for us too at TechTO. It's just we do want to have diversity of opinion and diversity of who we're putting up on our stage. And you're right, it is difficult, I think, to find
Particularly early
female
stage.
founders in general. Yeah. No, I think that's okay. And I guess just to maybe, I'm just going off script here, like for the
Fine.
climate tech side and what you just said, we've been talking about this a lot too, just even in quick takes and just in our own material. Do you think that we're just seeing more of these types of companies pop up because people just really care about this right now? And this is just something that the
Well,
market is driving?
so there's a few nuances on this too. So I think companies that help or startups that help companies save money by using less resources, which is now being bucketed as climate, have always existed and have always been valid businesses. Like lots
Yeah.
of even go back to one of my McKinsey consulting days, a lot of my products were like, hey, let's go to a paper plant and figure out how to reduce the water usage by 90%. It's not because they were trying to hit carbon targets or climate targets. It was just smart business because water went up from being like a penny a liter to $3 a liter. So it was a significant cost. Um, I think there's the hardware, there's the software, and there's a couple of components. I think there is a lot more because there's just a lot more interest in saying, hey, there's a massive problem. So there's a few things. one, there's a cultural change. So any trend gets driven by behavior changes, regulatory changes, or technology changes. I think what's going on with climate, you've got behavior change where it's more important for many people to see companies acting on climate. I think there's regulatory changes, which like, hey, you have to report on your level three, you know, carbon exposure. So those are two drivers, and I think there's some technical changes more on the hardware side. But climate's also got to me a point where there's a lot of stuff. And going back to that list we make of stuff I don't want to see. If I,
Hmm.
what I get pitched every week, here's a dashboard to measure the climate output for this corporation. Okay, I've seen this now 100 times in Canada.
Hundreds of times, yeah.
Yeah. So like, why is yours special? What's your unique insight? The other
Okay.
one I see is we're gonna go to building owners and help them, almost like a consulting project, monitor their dashboard, but then give a bunch of recommendations how to get better. Interesting, not necessarily exciting. Like, so it's I think the reason it's a problem that needs to be solved. There's regulatory changes, behavioral changes, and to a certain extent with the hardware side, technical changes. So that's why we're seeing a lot more climate. But there's also a lot of just this this is a nice business, but I don't think it'll be, you'll make it to 5-10 million. It's a great personal business still, but not one that investors get excited about.
Okay. So to shift maybe more so from pitches, fundraising, things that you have seen that have worked and maybe not worked, I want to highlight skill set around founders. So what to you has been the biggest like competency gap that you see in Canadian founders?
Well, culturally, we don't sell right. Um,
Okay.
you know, Canadians, we talk about what we've done, why it's rational, and Americans come sell the vision and sell what they're going to do. I could have an American invest two companies, exact same first year, one based in Toronto, one based in the Valley. Let's say the one in Toronto's at 1 million revenue in the first year, and the one in the Valley's at 20,000. The one in this Toronto from Toronto will go pitch investors. I did 1 million revenue last year. I'm gonna get to 2 million last year, and we're pretty good. The one in the States is like, we're gonna do 10 million next year, and this is the best team you've ever seen. So first, we are cultural disadvantage in our ability to go sales. I think the second thing is, because of that, lots of our teams hate selling and they don't do the proper work, and they're not great. They're not world class at it. And again, and like one of the and I think I think there's a bunch of contextual knowledge we don't know about as an ecosystem of what great looks like. So I think those are two things we could do better at.
Okay.
Um, I think the rest, and the other thing is maybe we don't move fast enough, and I think that's also part of our ecosystem loves government grants, loves non-dilutive capital, and the incentives there slow companies down and make them not customer focused enough. So I think if you're going to say what's another weakness is our companies don't move fast enough, and part of that's incentives put in there for the right reasons but the wrong outcome. Hey, let's go get an IRAP, and you have to now do this documentation, you have to get this project and your sponsor. Sometimes you're just better selling to customers and getting them to fund it instead of worrying about non-dilutive capital. So actually, personally, I think for me, it's a turn off when I hear someone saying, "Hey, we're gonna raise 500,000. We're never gonna get 2 million of non-dilutive capital." I'm like,
Hmm.
great. So you're gonna be slowed down because you have to check box all these things for the government. And yeah, you can get more efficiency, but it's a cost at learning and a cost at speed, and that's in early stages. You have to be the fastest, most customer tuned business out there because that's the only way you win.
Okay. And you just said like we're not good at selling. So just let's say a founder has a great concept, a great strategy for their business, but they're just not great at selling or the sales or the pitching. I guess what advice do you give to the founder that has like everything else is there? They just don't really know
Yeah.
how to maybe sell.
So again, I think most people are capable of it, and I think there's look, one common mistake founders do everywhere is they get too much into details. They don't get the high points. So remember, when you're selling, you
Okay.
want to leave someone with 3 bullet points. And the second thing is you want to basically channel your inner Jason, right?
We
Like, you
all
can
do.
imagine what Jason's like
Yep.
pitching, right?
Yep.
So there's many different ways to do this. There's go to improv classes, go take courses that help you be better at pitching and thinking on your feet, get
Okay.
mentors, practice, get feedback. It's like any other skill. And part of it's knowing your story, and part of it's practicing it, and part of it's building the skill. And most of this, like, there's limits. I'll never be Jason, but you don't have to be Jason. right? And someone that's a 3 on selling and pitching can get up to a 6 with the right, and it's going to be different for each person, right? But I think the biggest common things is I think I saw a great article recently. Like, we're all worried about being that asshole when we network, but you
Mm-hmm.
have to be that asshole when you go sell. You're like, we are the best company. Here's why, right? Or like, I'm not going to do good examples, and I think so. Don't be modest. And I think the other thing is don't get tied up in the details when you pitch. Those I think are the two common mistakes. But then everything else is practice, coaching, mentorships, courses. All of it's out there. And you don't have to be the
Okay.
best, and you don't have to be world class at it, but we have to be better as an ecosystem.
Okay. Yeah, I even just think for
Like,
myself,
here,
it's
I'll give you an example again,
yeah,
and this
okay,
is,
sure.
you know, I could go if I'm talking about TechTO, I could say, hey, from Canada, we have this decent tech community. Canada has this interesting stuff in tech, or I can go, did Canada has three to six biggest tech ecosystems in North America. The three fastest ones: Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver. Our organization is the biggest one in Canada. It's the biggest one, and we're gonna be talking to every single Canadian and be part of the political life, system, something like that. Like, again, that's not our vision, but like it's like, see the difference. One is being fact based, and the other one's like, here's why this is fucking important, and here's where we're going. And then
Okay.
I talk like the first. I'm guilty as charged too. Like, I need to practice when I want to go pitch something. Luckily, I'm not fundraising from investors. I fundraising from LPs. So,
I just
and I,
even think in
and
general,
also what I've done is for my fund to help me with that.
okay.
I've got a friend of mine that's much better that's my partner that's much better at sales than me. So he leads the sales. I'm part of it, but like, and he'll remind me like, Alex, you're fucking good at this. Here's why you have to what you say. Don't get caught in the details, right?
Okay. And what I was going to say is I think even just learning how to pitch yourself, like let alone like what even you're working on, it's just the whole pitching who you are, because that comes with relationship building, which I know I have a few questions on that in a second. So, uh, exit strategy. I want to talk about exit strategy, and in terms of, so to give you an example, your company's revenue generating, but only growing, let's say incrementally. So, i.e., not a rocket ship. What are the tips for an exit strategy from your side?
Well, I think it's always better to sell a bit early when there's still momentum than when it's completely flat. And I think there's
Okay. Yep.
two things. One, founders get tired, and like it's tiring, right? And then I think this you're saying growth slows down. Like like we always say, it's better to be bought than sold. So I
Yep.
think lots of people are scared to talk to strategics, partners. I think if you can build a relationship, like, you get bought by two, you get a premium for two people reasons. Someone is going to buy you for strategic reason. They think it's going to make their career and they're going to look awesome, or private equity sees returns on it. And you the best situations where you have two people like that, and so two people are competing and pricing the price up to an irrational perspective. The private equity is probably 6 to 8 months, and so you have to, like, you want to sell while there's still growth because they don't want to buy something without growth. Actually, everyone wants to buy something with growth. Like, ideal situation is still growing, you're near cash flow break even. I think these relationships start years before you want to sell, or months before you want to sell. Because I think if you wake up one morning and say I'm going to sell, and you go hire an investment banker, an investment banker can help you, it's going to be hard. And there is marketplaces out there that'll pay you, like, you know marketplaces to sell something at X times EBITDA. Um, I think you just build a relationship before you understand why someone would buy you, and then you have to make it a no brainer for them. All the That's a very high level. It's all the details, all the nuances are in the details, and that's where you're successful. But like, if it's slow and you have to understand who's going to buy that and why is it important to them, and
Hmm.
then how do you get in front of them. And you should know that before you even start thinking of selling.
Right. I think it's good to keep it high level just because obviously it's dependent on terms too. But I just think, to cover the high level response, I think that's great. Okay.
And
So,
again, it's what are you trying to sell? Do you want to leave the company? Do you want to be part? Like, understand why people are buying you, right? Like,
yeah.
um, we go through it. They're buying the team, they're buying the product, they're buying your distribution, right? So those are three things that, hopefully someone wants all of them. But again, do you want to go work for them, and what price do you want to work for someone else, right? So,
Right.
um, I've seen all those sales in the last few years. I think when there's no, yeah, but you have to, if you can't offer something in any of those three and it's not clear, then why are people going to do it?
Okay. And in terms of, I guess, the involvement with like an investor as opposed to like, let's say from two scenarios here, when would an investor maybe expect to have maybe more of like a board seat versus just getting regular updates or more passive involvement within a company?
Okay, early stages is an art and the science. Late stages, it's pretty easy. If you're doing a B or even an A round, it's like, hey, whoever the lead is, they'll want a board seat, especially if they're putting decent money and they're leading the round and getting like 10% ownership. I think early stage, like I think most founders don't want a board. I think it's a disservice to themselves. I think a board helps you just operate your business better, just like a monthly update to investors.
Yep.
Um, the question is, I think there's part of getting an investor on board is like, let's start with angels or smaller checks. I think part of it is understanding what is the promise you guys are making to each other, right? Hey, how
Right.
often am I going to update you? What do I want from you? Is it just cash, or do I want you to lean in and help me maybe recruit or provide feedback? I think it's up to the
Right.
founder to set that expectations. And I think for most cases, you want most people to be just passive, active cheerleaders, but passive in the day to day. I think with an early stage fund, um, it's you want to know if someone's going to be on the board member, who's that going to be, and what value they can add. And the reason they'll want a board seat is because they take a specific percent of ownership, and it's a decent check for them. But not everyone wants to be on the board. I think like you have to look at fun. Like I imagine Panache, who's doing our garage, who's doing quite a few checks. They don't need a board seat. They probably don't want a board seat, but they want to have like what I want with my early stage founders is a transparent, open conversation where there's no surprises. They communicate frequently to me, so because I can usually find ways to help them that they don't know about. But also, like I'm like the deal I have with them is you hit the panic button. I'll tell you, WhatsApp me, text me, email me. I'll tell you what
Hmm.
my next slot available is, and I'll talk to you. Hopefully that same day, and then help you talk to whatever you want to talk through. And
Right.
I think that's the relationship I want. I don't want to rely on the board. And I think there's a lot of other, some founders might be doing, some funds might be doing 100 invest. I know funds in the states that do 100 investments a year. They want just the monthly updates. They want the ability to call you, but they don't need more than that. Some take, want to be available, and some like some more traditional ones. Like imagine, again, don't know if it's true, but Golden, when they lead a lot more deals. It's a bit later than me. They probably take a board seat with most of the companies. Um, yeah, it's a bit all over the place. But I think
Okay.
as a founder, you should be understanding that. And I think founders are scared of boards, but boards make you run your business better and actually can take tension out of the business between you and your co-founder if they're done right. But again, many boards. I'm probably on 8 or 10 boards over the last couple of years, and they say some are run beautifully. The company gets so much out of it, and some are like I think are at best neutral value to the companies.
Okay. And just to go in on maybe about, the transparency, and you obviously expect to kind of be more involved in the decision making process, or like I said, when the panic buttons hit, it's not just oh, well, too bad, I want to be involved. So do you think it's beneficial for founders to maybe disclose like immediate concerns or potential roadblocks blocks right at the beginning versus kind of just the wait and
Well,
see what happens
so
mentality?
first of all, unless there's a board and it's a strategic decision, I'm not. I should be making decisions. I should be helping you inform your decision.
Yeah.
If and then if you tell me what you should disclose, like, hey, if a founder's about to leave before, just after a round closes, I should know that before. I don't want any big shocks after I write a check. So but you don't have to tell me every single problem before you do. Like, it's probably not a good sales process. I
Okay.
I I tend to like to know my companies pretty well when I invest,
Yep.
but I think um, like if again, and this is different by investor and founder, but I think what you want is an open relationship where if something's is some stuff like, hey, I have to fire employees and they're not performing, and I know how to do that. I don't even, you can give me that can come from investor update. Like, so be it. Like again, I'm gonna get worried if every 3 months you're turning through the team, there's something in leadership, and then I'll say, hey, what the hell's going on? You're a team of 6 and you've had 15 employees in the last 6 months. Something's wrong here.
Yep.
Um, but like if it's not like, hey, we've had a portfolio company of ours, one of their main customers asked for a feature to be built out or rolled out in the next update, and they said, they didn't think it was important, and they got an email from the CEO of this like Fortune 50 company saying maybe we don't enter a contract. So they were shocked by that. The second what they did is they went to any investor that had significant, they sent an email saying, hey, can we get some advice here, right? And like you don't want to wait for like 3 months till that deal is gone. The second you got they said, okay, we were this is unexpected, we don't know how to deal with this, and they went and asked for advice, you know. So I think it's it depends on your personality, depends on your investors, depends on the relationship. But like yeah, like the worst two things you can do with investors is a don't provide no updates, and when you need more money to say, hey, we need more money because we're almost there ready for the next round. No one wants us to be thought of as an ATM. And the second thing is bad surprises should it should never just be a bad surprise that comes in like unexpectedly. It's
Right.
like think about any relationship. Would you
Yeah.
want your partner just to tell you, hey, oh God forbid, get screened for cancer and get worries, and then wait another 3 months to get a test and tell you, oh, I've got stage 4 cancer. Like
Exactly. You
part of my,
these are
part of
things you
your
want
relationship with
to.
your partner, you want to be there to
Yeah.
help them, and then you don't want to get in that you don't want to be, like yeah, I don't know, it's a bad analogy, but it's
No, no, it makes sense. And I think it's part of the whole building rapport amongst your investor founder relationship. It's just involving them in, the important decisions that arise from, I guess, the ebbs and flows of whatever happens from being a founder and investing and growing your company. So, aside from just maybe the obvious team changes, product updates, just anything that would be beneficial for an investor to know in these monthly updates. Just a question from one of the insiders: is there anything else that's just really important that you it's just a given you'd expect to see
so
aside from those things?
again depends on the stage, and I think there's a couple good examples out there. I'm someone
Okay.
that says I'm someone that likes having more transparency. Like the way I look, really the benefit of an investor update is like life moves fast when you're a founder, and if you're forced
Yeah.
to communicate every month to your investors, it's a couple hours, maybe more, maybe less, where you reflect on what you've learned and what you're prioritizing for next month. So I think that's the first thing you should be getting out of the newsletter, more than communicating to any. And I think there there's usually two forms of that newsletter. There's one is to all the insiders and investors, and there's either ones that potential investors or small investors who want all the details. So I think you should. I usually think what's the three. I like to see what's the 3 wins, the 3 losses. What have we learned? What's our priorities? And then there's a bunch of KPIs depending on what you're doing. But what I'm looking at early stage is how quickly you're learning, and so some companies I want to update. Hey, here's what our sales pipeline looks like because that's our number one priority is starting to monetize. Some is like, here's the product features or here's what we've learned and here's where we're thinking about pivoting. Instead of me just answering randomly here, we could probably share a couple templates, but usually it's
Yeah, that'd
I
be
like to
great.
see victories, losses or learn lessons, priorities for the next time, some KPIs, and maybe some updates on different parts of the company depending on how big you are, and then investor asks. It could be something simple as like, "Hey, we're going to be announcing our round next week. We'd just like you to all, you know, amplify on social media." Or it could be, we're having a hard time finding a CMO, or you know. But again, what I will do is there's a couple examples out there that we can share. Maybe we can do as a follow up.
Perfect. I was gonna say, I think there's gonna be a few follow-ups from this
Yeah.
conversation, which is great. It's hard to ask for what you want, and I know, especially as a founder, even if like no matter what stage you're at in terms of fundraising and building your company, it's obviously hard to have conversations with investors asking them for money, for guidance, mentorship, whatever it may be. Is there a playbook, method, something that maybe a past founder or someone that you know that has invested in a company has said, I really appreciated this, and they asked for what they want, but they did it in a way that maybe didn't seem aggressive and it made sense in terms of what they were asking me to do for the relationship. I don't know if there's anything you can share.
So there's a couple. I'll break that down to slightly different questions. I think first of all,
Sure.
you need to know what you need, why you need it, and who can help you with that.
Okay.
Right. So the best way to ask something from an investor or anyone is
Mm-hmm.
to make it easy for someone to help you. So let's talk about let's introductions to an enterprise. So if a
Yep.
customer, if a company, again, ideally, hey, I would like an introduction to so and so at their foods. This is their position. We think this is our ideal customer profile. Or hey, we want introduction to someone at their foods, Sarah Lee and Weston. Um, we notice you know the person in this position at those 3 companies.
Yeah.
Um, we're gonna for we assume it's okay for you to make an introduction, and then follow up with a tailored email. That's not like it's pretty template, but tailored enough So I can just literally forward the email and not look stupid. And then now you've taken something you've asked me, something you explained it to me, and you've had three separate emails falling. That takes me 30 seconds to do it. I'm going to do it, right?
Mhm.
Versus lots of times I get, hey guys, we think we need people at big CPG companies in the HR department. Can you do introductions? Well, okay. Well, you haven't asked me specifically for anything. I don't know why the fuck you're going to do it. I don't who to ask, and now I have to go do all this work. I'm not going to do it like that. That's with introductions, but you can think about that like anything. Like the easier, more context, and the easier you make me to help you.
Mhm.
It's like I've got once of my founders again for fundraising. They want an introduction to VCs. Um, they did an amazing job of realizing I knew people I didn't know. It would have come top to mind, and they probably sent me like 20 or 30 custom tailored emails, and they followed up. And you can also put some social pressure. They had a spreadsheet where here's where of all the people we've asked for introductions, and here's who's done them. So I go look at them and say, oh shit, this person, like everyone's a bit competitive. It's done more introductions.
Yeah.
That's introductions. Like it could be, and there's many, like, and that's the easiest one to explain and make it. But like there's a bunch of ways you can do that. Hey, we need to go. We have we need your time to help close this. We're trying to recruit this person to be head of revenue.
Mhm.
Can you meet? They have these three slots. Can you make any of them work? Also, here's the questions we have them, or here's what we need you to sell them on. You get, you've made me. You've already asked the questions I would ask you, and it's just easier for me to have that call. And you've made it. You've just take the cognitive load off the person you're asking, and make it so easy
Okay.
she or he can say no.
Right. So literally just ask for exactly what you want and don't
Yeah,
more so do it as do suggestions. Just being like, I need this.
yeah,
Can
and
you
and
help
the
me get
easier you make
this?
it for me to deliver that,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Then it's harder for you to say no. Or
Again, these
it's
are easy, concrete examples. I think there's more abstract
sure.
ones, but the more abstract is, the more I can't, the harder for me to deliver it, or the more time it takes for me, the less likely I'm to do it. Like, not that I don't want to do it. It's just like anyone that you want to ask for something probably has a stupid schedule, and has
Mm-hmm.
like, I think I'm in back to back today till 7, and I have to do, take care of my family, and at 9 o'clock I'll
Of
probably sit down
course.
and email, and then I have to do the real work at I don't know midnight.
Right. Yeah. So as efficiently as someone can make your life,
Yeah.
that's the key to success here.
Clarity and
Yep.
efficient will get you. You'll be surprised at that. And again, some people may never help you, but that's also why you'll get to know who will help you. And it does. And at if you don't ask, you don't get.
Right. And it's true. If you don't ask, you'll never know. So that's a great way to leave it. I want to just ask maybe a couple more because I want to leave
Yeah.
some time at the end for insiders to network with one another or etc. Whatever they need to drop off, that's okay. But so we have talked about this just a fair bit recently in just our show and our own, I guess, content that we're putting out. That there was a drop off in terms of the large fundraising announcements that we were seeing, and of course how the market has just ebbed and flowed. But you did say that you noticed some prime differences at the start of 2023 compared to now. So if you could just share just what have those differences been.
Well,
It doesn't have to be just in relation to the fundraising market. You could be more broad, but just what are those unique changes you've seen from this
optimism.
optimism? Okay.
Like
I think that's great.
people. Like again, I think like I said, even like I said at the beginning, I think LLM's gone from a cool technology to people actually using to solve problems. So that's an early stage. I think the market's tightening for employees, which is always a good sign that people are optimistic about the world. And I think the public markets have been at highs for a while now, especially for tech. Yes, it's been driven by lots of whatever this magnificent seven or whatever we're calling them these days. But I also think there's been clarity in the market, what people are putting values on and understanding. So I think one thing that got lost in 21 is every company was being looked at the same, and now a DTC company is going to have a harder time raising capital in the valuation, but it's probably more sustainable. So what you're seeing now is also people willing to make moves either with their money, with their time. So I'm seeing people like it's getting a bit easier to recruit senior executives. I'm
Mm-hmm.
seeing corporations excited to be customers now. So like 2023, everything felt frozen, and people were not investing their own money or time either as a customer, as an employee, as a founder. And there's a lot more willingness to talk and a lot more willingness to act than there was in 2023.
Okay. And just on the note of maybe asking someone to give you a reference or refer you, just a question from the chat. Do you think it's fine to ask someone you've not met to refer you to someone else? And maybe what's the way of going about doing that? Because it's tough, right? To have to
Yeah,
just,
again, your hit
you know,
rates there's going to be low. I think it's a well written. Again, if it, I think it has to be really well written. Saying, "Hey, I know you're connected to Jane. Um, you might be better off just going to them directly, like, and say,
okay.
we noticed that Jane has been posting about this or has this problem. We assume she has this problem. We have a unique solution. We'd be, could you just forward this email and make the introduction? You don't want them to refer you to them, like ask for, hey, endorse you, because the first person, like if someone, if I'll forward some stuff and someone goes, what do you know this person? Go, I don't know, right? Because like I'm not gonna not make something up, but like I think if you, again, it's doing this smart email. Like I think lots of times for potential customers, like even for if you want a job, go solve the problem. Like, don't say, "Hey, I'd like to talk to you about your job and have a coffee chat." I don't want to fucking have a coffee chat. Say, "Hey, Alex, I want to work at N49P. You know, notice you've got lack of, you haven't made an investment in Calgary. Here's three companies I think would be great for you to invest in, and here's why." Okay,
Mhm.
I'll take that. Like, and you can, hey, we have a solution for your company. You know, you can reach out to them directly, or you can do something like that through it. Hey, it seems like you're very close to Jane. She's the head of HR for this company. We know that we have 20 customers like similar to her that have this problem. We've got a solution. We'd love for you to make her life easier by introducing us.
Okay. And just a couple more questions before we maybe
Yeah.
close it out. But just there's been an emergence of maybe small shop VCs. So like again, you're seeing successful founders that have large exits that maybe move into more of the VC route and kind of creating maybe their own funds, things like that, where they're investing back into the community. So obviously extremely positive because they're investing back
Yeah.
into the ecosystem. But as someone that works for an established fund, do you find that there's overcrowding? Do you like to see this?
So,
Are you kind of done with
and
it? Like
again,
what's your perspective?
I'd still say I'm an emerging fund, and I started off with $1.5 million as my first fund.
Right.
Um,
Okay.
Look, my view is there's more than enough deals in this ecosystem, so it's better to have more capital out there.
Yeah.
I think it what what you understand is what the motivation. If it's a fund that's brand new and you're not sure if they're, let's call it, are they, why are they doing this? What's their motivation? Are they going to be interested? Like, I think a lot of people think it's fun to be a VC manager, and I know a few of those emerging funds have gone into it 2 years later, say this is not exciting, and they're basically they're like, I thought it'd be more like being an angel, or I thought it'd be more exciting, and have basically pulled back. So I think what you want to know is how committed they are to being, why are they doing this, and how committed they are. And I think that's something particular, and that's a bit unfair to them, because I think anyone that's doing it has hopefully thought through it.
Yeah.
Um, Usually they're not taking a whole round anyway, so they're not going to beat out your whole cap table because they're writing smaller checks. And what I'd ask with anyone that's backing you is to understand what their incentives are, what their objectives are, and even like, let's, any of the big multi-stage funds in the U.S., you have to understand what the incentive of the investors, it's what the fund's incentive is, and what the partner's incentive that is, right? Because you want to know that you're going to be you're never going to be fully aligned. It's just hard to be fully aligned with anyone, but you want to know that they're aligned at least for the next 24 months and what success looks like and why they're investing and how they can help you, right?
Right.
Um, it's hard to raise capital, but it's also, it's like you don't want to be in a bad relationship. And I'm not saying and I'm not saying this particularly for the emerging ones. I'm just saying just generally, like any fund out there, you should know what their incentives are and what that person's incentive is.
Right.
And cap, and if you get along with the person you think they're going to be a good investor, why wouldn't you take them on?
Yeah. Completely agree. Last question for you. We've talked about all of the things that you like to see, all the things that a founder could do right. Those update emails, hiring well, finding a good co-founder, building a relationship where an investor just maybe has an understanding of their goals so that they can build together. If there's one thing you could just say they just have to do this right, what is that one thing? Like it's a non-negotiable for you. If this is done right, I'm excited, whether everything else is stagnant.
Well, again, that's a pretty broad statement. I don't think there's anything, like, I can tell you what, just if I can't trust you or I don't believe you're ethical, it's done, right? Like,
Yep,
you know, um, yeah, I think that's like the
that's
killer,
number
right?
one.
Like, that's number one, right? Like, it's more like, and there's a lot, like, I think that other thing is to be not a quick mover or learner, right? Like if you haven't like if you move slowly, you don't learn from what you're seeing in the market. That's going to kill your company, and I'll be frustrating. I'll find it frustrating, but like that's not a reason. Like that's but like if I can't trust you, I think it's usually you're lying, you're greedy. I don't know what it is, but
Yep.
like if your values aren't aligned, like, aren't someone like yeah, I there's no second chance. Like I have some founders again that I've worked with that their company may not work out. I'll give them the check the next day to call and start another business because they've done everything right. I've done some founders that are successful, but I think morally not aligned. I might not back again.
Hmm. Do you, sorry, just last one. Do you do reference checks on people? Like, I guess, do you follow up with anybody that maybe worked with them in the past that has a
Yes.
relationship with them and go, what do I need to know about this person? And how does that work?
Well, reference checks are interesting because yeah, people give you their references and you'll usually call them. Sometimes I'll try if I know that we have someone in common, I'll call them. Problem is reference checking for founder. You can probably check under integrity, and there's probably some other stuff you can learn. But
Yeah.
sometimes the people don't know how to give a good reference either. Like, hey, they're thinking of them as an employee. Like a good employee may not make a good founder. A good founder may not make a good employee, right? Like, yeah, like
Hmm.
so it's input, and I'll do it on every founder. I also do a police check, criminal check to make sure there's
Yep.
nothing like it in the past.
Of
That
course.
just
Yeah.
you know but like yeah, you try to do reference checks, and it's asking the right questions and listening for what they're like. It's like sometimes I do diligence with experts in the industry. I'll get them to talk to the founder, and those people say, I don't believe this idea works. I'm like, okay, no, like what I'm using there is this founder credible with what they're saying, and is their insights right? Okay, like so like the same thing with reference checks. I'm not necessarily not need everything to be. Just because everything said is great doesn't mean I'm happy with it. And if some stuff are bad, depends on why it's bad, right? Like, hey, yeah, this person didn't do the task because they kept them solving problems for a customer, like taking the easy. No, that's
Right.
obviously okay. Yeah, so they're listening to the customer solving problems. Okay, that's usually what I want in the founder, right? But that might
Right.
not make a good employee, right? Yeah, but reference checks are one of those. They're an art, and
Yep.
I would love to say I'm perfect at it. I don't think anyone is.
No, I don't think anyone is. Well, I would say as someone who, like, if I apply to a job, right, I would have to provide references, police check, all of that. So I would imagine, I wasn't sure if it was a bit of a
But like
lengthier
even with you,
process.
when you wanted to work with us, like we had the
Yep.
easiest reference checks. Leah, right? She was working for us, and she had worked with you in the past, right? If you gave me your references,
Hmm.
hopefully, like look, I've also had people who are so unaware, and again, this is more an employee and venture in this founder stage. Someone's given us references, and they were horrible. I've had that happen
Oh,
before, and
no.
that
Yeah.
like that way. Even when just regardless of the reference is not saying great things, it's like okay, you've got a misjudgment here, and that's a big problem.
Hmm. I think you just have to hope that, you're doing your best to not burn any bridges, right? Because obviously all of this stuff in some way comes back to you one day. Someone
You have
posted
to
in
also be careful too. If lots of, especially early stage, founders may have not left their
yep.
job, right? They might be side hustle. So I'm not going to call, I don't want to call up the founder and tip them off. And if for whatever reason they can't
Yep.
raise, it's a bad situation for them too, right?
That's true. That's also, there's a strategy around that as to when to provide that information. Someone had just commented, "Oh, parking tickets," and I said, "I think that might be the worst thing anyone finds on me too. I think there might be a couple of unpaid
I
parking
don't think
tickets
parking tickets come
at
up in criminal
worst."
chat.
Well, on that note, I think again, this was much different of an AMA, I think, from our last one, and definitely a focus on a lot of the relationship building, which has come up. These are great takeaways for everyone that was listening. Again, people that are just trying to build their business and also maybe build those initial relationships with investors and also just find their way in the ecosystem. So, just on that note, Alex, again, thanks for your wisdom and your time and sharing your thoughts with everyone. This recording will be available. You can watch it back at a later date. And Alex, we have a lot more follow ups to do in terms of the FAQs and other, I think, important nuggets that could be shared more broadly with the rest of our community. So for now, I just thank everyone who joined us. Uh, there is an upcoming insider event, March 27th, as I mentioned at the beginning. You'll get all the details for that in the newsletter, which will go out next week. And I'm going to throw it to networking. So if anyone wants to stick around, meet another insider, chat, drop off is up to you. But thank you, everyone, for joining. And we'll be back in a few months with another one of these. So thanks again, everyone, for your questions.
Awesome. Thank you for
All right.
attending.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.